Assalamu alaikum, Madiha Arsalan, yet again with another book, Shimmering Scraps of Poetry and Madness by Mahvash Mohtadullah. She's a brilliant poet and a writer based in Sri Lanka. Her writing is lifelike. She writes fluidly. Her rich vocabulary makes you live the life that she is leading. The stream of consciousness in this book is brilliantly executed. And this book contains four sections, three out of which is poetry, and the last one is prose. She asked me to review her book, so here I am reading an excerpt because I think that would be the best way to pay her work a little tribute from my side. Here it goes. A gracious farewell. In 2008, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. She lived with the disease for 4 years with the dignity, grace, and courage of the superwoman that she was. Never once did she put on the mantle of the reduced or the afflicted or the invalid. Right to the end, she remained the gracious matriarch of her warm, welcoming home. Towards the end, the final 3 days to be exact, when she should have been allowed to make that final walk, with the same beautiful poise with which she had lived her life, we, her family, and her medical specialists intervened with all of our might to fight off the inevitable. She was taken to two different hospitals over the span of the last 3 days, where the vitally alive battled to avert or at least delay an end that became heartbreakingly beleaguered. My final memory of her last day with us has nothing in the way of any gentleness, love, or the deep peace of final goodbyes. In a memory fraught with fussing, poking, prodding, medical staff intubating, pulling, and pushing her as they, with determined professionalism, executed their Hippocratic oaths. The memory of her looking right at me, confused and exhausted, as they inserted the ET tube down her throat, is still searingly painful. For a full 2 years after that, I thought of that terrible, terrible last scene every single night before I allowed myself to sleep. Perhaps it was my form of emotional self flagellation for being a well meaning party to the inadvertent dignity and torment my mother suffered towards the end. And then I'm not sure whether it was a providential helping hand reaching out from my own subconscious to finally pull me out of my emotional abyss, or the tender cosmic reverberations of the maternal bond that helped me to transition to my current state of mental well being. That said, it was a dream that gave me back some semblance of peace. So lucid, potent, and reassuring was the vision of my mother being well and happy that I woke up with the sheer visceral force of the feeling, the warmth of her touch still lingering on the skin of my hands. And so I finally did surface from the whiter pit of guilt and grief, and I have since forgiven myself. All living creatures are the sum total of their experiences. And if there's one thing I have learned from my experience of losing someone close to me, is the ability to see death for what it is, unavoidable. While I have lost my fear of the end, I also now understand the profound blessing a quick, relatively painless exit is. That a departure that is underscored with acceptance, essential conversations, tranquility, and quality time spent together becomes the blessed catalyst for more fully celebrating the lives of the loved ones we have lost. That the ability to see life and death with more ethereal eyes to help us to grieve a little less and remember with joy so much more are the cornerstones of a loving, respectful parting. These end of life conversations need to logically start in the hallowed halls of medical science. Medical caregivers need to bring more depth to their oaths taken for preserving the well being of human life, to include the dignity of death. These conversations need to become mainstream to change the culture of the crusadings and contrariness around death. In our current approach, we are left with too little in the way of the love and grace of final farewells. It will take a consummate change in our emotional and social makeup and temperaments to begin to ennoble death even half as much as we do life. Given the current state of our world, this gracious labor of love around final partings may be the panacea for reminding us of both the wonderful alchemy of the state of being alive and the eternal fragility of life itself. Thank you, Madiha.